Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well today, and thanks for joining. Today, we're going to talk about a fun little feature called form processing through AI Builder in Power Automate. I think this is one of the more underutilized features that Microsoft provides, and it can really be a lifesaver for businesses that utilize forms on a day-to-day basis. So imagine you work for a manufacturing company and each day you receive 50 plus invoices where this information has to be keyed in manually into a database of some sort. So what this form processing through Microsoft allows is for you to set up a model based on a particular form, define the values that you want to extract from that form, and then take that information, send it in an email, insert it into a SharePoint list, insert it into Dynamics directly. And so that's what we're going to walk through today. We're actually going to walk through the process of creating a model, training it, creating a cloud flow to then extract a form from an email that we receive, process that form, extract the data, and create not only a donation record, which is going to be the example we use today, but also create an account record based on information pulled from that form. So the first thing we need to do before we get started is we need to have some example forms. You have to have at least 5 to train a model. So I have some sample donation forms that I already have built out, and I've got 5 of those. That is the minimum. More is better. The more you train, the more likely your data is going to be accurate, especially if you're using a form that has handwritten words on it rather than just typed out fields. So we're here in Dynamics, and I actually just have a very basic donation record set up in Dynamics, just some base fields, the amount of the donation, the date, donation type, phone number, email, notes, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip over to Power Automate, and on the left-hand side, you'll see AI Builder. When I select that, we have the option to build. So once we select build, we're going to see an option for form processing. So I'm going to select form processing. And the first thing I'm asked to do is to provide a name for my model. So I'm just going to name it donation, since that is the example that I'm going to be using and I can't spell. Again, right here, we're prompted and or told we do need 5 or more documents with the same layout. I'm going to click create. And when this creates, it's going to ask me to define the fields or the values that I want to extract from my form. So I'm just going to go off the top of my head here of some of the fields that I want to pull in. First one is going to be the donor name. Next, the business name. This is one of the fields on my form, and this is actually the field that we're going to use to create a new account record. We're going to grab a phone number and email address. The donation amount, the donation date, and I'm not going to add all of them for time's sake, but I will add, let's go with website. Now you'll notice when I'm adding new fields, I have a couple of different options. So I've got, your basic field. I also have the option to add a single page table. So if I have a form with a grid on it, say product type, product quantity, product ID, and cost per units, I can actually select that entire table from one of my forms and process that through the training process for your model. Also have the option for checkbox. This is a bit of a newer feature that is now available in form processing. And it just so happens that I actually have a couple of checkboxes on my form. Now, the field in my Dynamics 365 table is actually an option set. And in my form, it's 4 different checkboxes that are there to specify what that donation type is. So in order to build this out in the flow like I want, I actually need to create 4 separate fields, one for each checkbox option. So again, this is donation type. So my first donation type is cash. The next donation type is service. And then we have product/item. And then we have other. So once I have all the fields defined that I want to extract from my form, I can go on to the next step. Now, if I do accidentally click next and I forgot to add a field that I actually need, no worries, you can come back to this page. Even after you've already published your model, you can still come back and edit that. So I'm gonna go ahead and click next. And here's where we need to create a collection. Each model has to have at least one collection, and each collection has to have at least 5 files uploaded to it. That's the minimum. The more, like I said earlier, the more you have, the more accurate your model is going to perform. For this training, we're just going to do one collection with 5 documents. So I'm going to upload those from my machine. Here are my sample donation forms. I've got my 5 that I need. And I'm going to go ahead and upload these. Once they're uploaded, I can click close. And the next step is to select analyze. You might ask what is happening in the background with this analyze process. All I know is that, excuse me, in the background, this analyze process is identifying the structure of your form, detecting the form fields, and extracting those field values. This doesn't take too long, but it might be another minute or so. So we'll let this load. All right, and now our forms are loaded in and we can start defining our fields. So we're going to define each field that we're going to be using, and once we finish one form, we actually need to do this for all 5 of the forms in our collection. So for business name, I'm going to select the business name and tag that as my business name field. Then I've got my donor name here, tag it as donor name. I'm not including any of my address fields for the sake of time, but you know, I had city, state, and zip separated. So if I wanted to define those, I can click on, you know, the city of Greensboro. Then I would see my city field that I could tag, state, zip, etc. So we're going to grab my phone number, email address here, the donation amount, the date, and my website. Now I've finished with all of my fields. The next step is to define my checkboxes. So you can see how I have 4 different options as checkboxes here. So I'm going to select the box as well as the label of that checkbox. So here's cash, product item slash type, or product slash item, service, and other. So once you finish that last field, that particular document that we're on changes to blue and lets you know that you're finished with that one, so you can move on to the next. You can see that it recognizes those fields from the previous selection or the previous document. It got all the fields. Every time I've done this, I do each time have to define my checkboxes. Two down, three to go. And all my fields are already defined. It did that for me. Just need to do my checkboxes. Almost there. And other. All right, so we've tagged all of our documents. Now we can move on to the next step. The next page gives us a bit of model summary, just lets us know who the owner is, how many collections, where the documents originated from, and what fields we're extracting from the forms. Next step is we are going to train the model. And training just prepares the model to be used. Very vague definition of what training is from Microsoft. So I can click go to models, and I can see that this is still in that training process. So once this finishes, it'll display as trained. And once it's trained, I can then publish that model. Once I publish it, I'll then be able to reference that in a Cloudflow. It should be done pretty soon. All right, there we go. So status is now trained. I can open up my donation model. You can see my selected fields. And now I can publish. Now, once I publish this form processing model, I can go back and edit the model. When I do make an edit, if I've already published, there will actually be two different versions of this document. There will be a published version and there will be a last trained version. So when you go and make changes, you need to remember that you actually have to select that last trained model and publish that. Or else you might be referencing that model in your flow and expecting it to pull out a field that you added and it's not showing up. It's because you need to go back and republish that model. So again, so now our model's set up. We've got our form processing model in place. Now we can begin to utilize it. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a Cloudflow, and we are going to extract forms that we receive in an email. So, I'm reaching out to individuals requesting donations from my organization. They email me in this form letting me know how much they're planning to pledge, on what date, and what type. Is it going to be cash? Is it going to be a service that they provide? So, I might get 10 or 15 of these a day. Well, I don't want to have to sit there and plug all this information in manually. So let's let technology do the work. So we're going to select use model. We're going to use this new flow in Power Automate option. And again, as I mentioned, there are different options for initiating this particular model. You can use an email as a trigger. You can manually trigger it, a SharePoint file being uploaded into SharePoint can trigger. But for this example, we're going to use receiving an email as the option. So it's going to check and make sure my connections are all good. They are. I can now click continue. And this template, if you will, is going to give me a really good base point for the flow that I want to build. So this first step here is checking my inbox. It's checking to see if I receive an email with AI Builder in the subject line. And it's also checking if there are attachments. And it is only going to run if there's an attachment. For this training, I'm just going to change this subject filter to donation. Just makes a little bit more sense. And this next step here is just a welcome. Thanks for using Power Automate from Microsoft. We don't need this, so I'm going to remove this step. The next condition that's presented here is determining whether or not this is a legitimate attachment or not on this email. If it is, it's going to continue and do its steps. If it's a image from someone's email signature, it's going to stop the flow and it's not going to do anything. So here's where we get into our AI builder. It's using our AI model that we just created, donation. It's using the attachment content type as the form type, and then the content bytes for the form. Next, it's going out and it's getting my Office 365 profile. That's because this particular flow is sending out an email when that form is processed, which I love. You know, you could set, again, I'm going to set this up to create a record, but I'm going to set that up in between this step. So if I get an email, I'll know that the rest of my flow was successful. Now, this particular email, all it's doing is saying, congratulations, your Power Automate flow ran successfully. Here are some of the fields extracted. It's just giving us some examples of what can be done. So we've got one of our checkboxes here, a confidence score. So again, I mentioned the more forms you test and train your model, the more confident that the AI in the background is going to be with the information that it extracts from those forms. I'm just going to delete this, and I'm going to just keep those sample fields that were pulled into that email automatically. So, you know, we can get as complex or stay as simple as we want in this particular flow. For this example, I do want to add a variable. You know, if I get an email with a form attached to it and it's a donation form, I want to reference the business name on that form. And if that business name matches an account in CRM, then I want that record, the donation record, to link up to that particular account. If there isn't a match, then I want a new account to be created, and then I want that donation record linked to that account. So right after our trigger step, we're going to add our variable step here. So we're going to initialize our variable. We're going to give this just the name of account GUID. And this is going to be a string. Now I'm going to give this a null value. So in case I pull in a list of records, a list of accounts, and I don't have a match with that GUID, I don't want that record to not be created. If I don't insert a null here, then it's going to fail when it gets to that step, and we're not going to even have, you know, anything happen. And I want the donation to be created whether or not there's an account in CRM or not. So I've got my variable added. Let's re-expand the rest of this here. So after my step where I am extracting my information from my forms, I am actually going to add a step in between my Get Office 365 profile and this send email. So what I'm going to add here is I want to pull in all my accounts. So I am going to add my list rows. My table is going to be my account table. And here I want to filter down the accounts that are coming in. And I want to reference the business name that's being pulled from my form. So in this filter rows here, I'm going to add name equals, and then I'm going to pull in my business name. So there's my business name value. And then I want my row count to be 1. I don't want to pull in, if I have a duplicate account, if I pull in 2, it's not going to know which one to update or associate that donation with. So I want to only pull in 1 row. The next step I'm going to add is I'm going to check the length of the results that come in from that previous step. So I'm going to add a function here. Just a second, I'm grabbing that formula. It's not something I have memorized off the top of my head. Where are you? Oh, you know what? I know you need to add a condition. Sorry about that. Where is this? So here I'm going to paste in this formula. So what this is doing is it's checking the length or how many rows are returned in this list row function up above this condition. Now, if this is equal to 0, then what I want to happen is I want to go ahead and create a new account. So this is saying, I pulled in my list of accounts and nothing was returned, which means that we don't have a match to that account inside of CRM. So if yes, now we're going to add a row. Add a new row, and this is going to be a new account. And my account name is going to be my business name that was extracted from my form processing. Now I could go in and, if I had some other fields that were on that form, I could populate, more rows, or excuse me, more columns. But I'm just going to stick with the required fields. I'm just going to add that business name. Next, I need to actually set my variable. So at the very top here, I've initialized my variable, but now I actually need to define my variable. Here's my set variable. And here's my account GUID. And so what I want to do is I want this variable to equal the GUID of the account that I just created. So I'm going to tell the flow that I want to reference the accounts table. And then I want to grab this unique identifier. So now we've defined the variable if no results are pulled in. Now, if there is a match that's pulled in based on the business name comparing to my account in CRM, I am going to set my variable based on the account that I'm pulling in, because I need to grab that GUID for the step that's coming next in order to link my donation record that's going to be created to the account. This again is going to be the account GUID. We're going to dynamically add unique identifier. So now, if no results are returned, I'm creating a new account and I'm defining my variable with that GUID for that newly created account. If there is a record pulled in this list, I'm setting my variable to equal that account GUID. So now, no matter what I do from this point on, if I use this variable, I'll know that I'm going to have a valid GUID in my flow to link my donation record up to. So next, I am going to insert a step in between this last variable and my send email step. And this is where I'm actually going to create my donation. So I'm going to add a new row. My table is going to be my donation table. And here's where I can add, information that I'm pulling in from my form. So my donor name, like my donor name value. I know we brought in the amount. Business name for sure. We didn't bring in any address information. We did grab the date. So date value. Donation type, we're going to come back to that one. So this donation type is an option set, and these are the checkboxes that I defined. So we're actually going to need to add a condition to account for the possibility of the different checkboxes being checked. So we will come back to that one. Email address value. We did not grab notes. We did have a phone number. Here's our phone number value. don't have state, street. We did grab the website, I believe. Website value. All right, so now we are creating this record. We're creating a new donation. And we actually, one thing, the main thing I was doing up here is we need to actually link this donation to the account. So here's where I'm going to plug in my variable. So regardless of what happens up here, either direction that this flow takes, this account GUID variable should always have a value to it, whether or not anything's returned from our get list step. So once we've got that record created, now we can create our condition. We're going to add a condition, and our value is going to be those checkbox fields. So first one was cash. If cash is equal to true, then we want to set the donation type to cash. So I'm going to add a step here. And this is going to be an update a row step. It's going to be on my donation table. And the row ID here, I'm going to grab that from my add a new row to. And, word to the wise, it's a great idea to label your steps. I did not for this training, but we would be able to see, new donation creation here. And it's just easier to read, and it's, you know exactly what you're grabbing. So here's my donation. And now I just need to update my donation type to cash. Now, if cash is not equal to true, I'm going to add another condition over here. The next one was service. I'm typing in the wrong area. Service value. And speaking of, I did this wrong too. Cash value. That's more like it. All right, so if service is equal to true, then I want to update my donation to have a service type, or excuse me, donation type of service. And we're going to add another condition. So this one will be product slash item. Is equal to. If so, now we're going to update that row again. And we are going to set the donation type to product slash item. So 3 down, 1 to go, one more condition. It's all going to be worth it, I promise. So this one is other. Habit of typing in the wrong field. Other value is equal to true. We are going to yet again update our donation. donation type to other. All right, well, let's test this out and see if we did this correctly. All right, flow is ready to go. We recommend you test it. Let's do it. I've got an email ready to go on my other screen that I'm going to send to myself. So again, one of the things that this flow is checking for is that the subject line contains the word donation. So I've got donation in my subject line and I've got a form as an attachment. I'm going to go ahead and send this. We should see that email come clearly. There it is. And we will know fairly quickly if our flow worked, because we should receive an email if it makes it all the way through. Now, I know for a fact that Christian McCaffrey does not have an account in my CRM, so I'm expecting a new account to be created, and I'm expecting a new donation to be created and linked to that account. And there we go. Congratulations, Kevin. Your Power Automate flow ran successfully. Here are some of the fields extracted. Again, these are just some random ones that Microsoft chose for us. So now if we flip over to CRM, I've got my active donations pulled up here. I'm gonna refresh. And look at that, we've got a brand new donation with all the fields that we specified. You can get as crazy as you want with this. You know, we could have gone a lot further. And you'll notice the donation type here is service. Let's just double check that real quick. Service was checked here. And if we go to accounts, this Carolina Panthers LLC should be brand new. I don't have mine created on date, but trust me, this just got created. And there's that donation that got linked to it. So if we go to our accounts, we've got 6 accounts. I'm going to send one more email to myself. Now this time I'm going to include 4 attachments, 4 separate PDF documents that are all different forms. So let's say you get an email from someone who is giving you quotes, or you've got 4 invoices in one email. This flow will actually work on all 4 of those PDF documents all at one time. Just going to add four additional files here and send. So one of the PDF documents that I'm sending my Green LLC is one of the accounts. So we should not see an additional Green LLC be created, and we should be able to see a donation populate in this subgrid. So there's our test. We've got 4 separate donation forms. Now I should see 4 separate emails come through letting me know when each of those forms has been processed. There's one. That was for Ashley. Let's see, this was the Packers LLC. If we go to accounts, now we see Packers LLC, and we've got a donation. See that form type donation type was cash. Just double check. Cash was checked. Check on that. And we've got one for Kevin. This was other, Wilson LLC. Wilson LLC. There's our donation with a donation type of other. And we've got Lauren here. Lauren with a donation type of service. Pod LLC. Check our accounts. And there's Pod LLC was created. And there's our donation with donation type of service. And last but not least, you've got Melissa. Now this was one where the account was already in place. So we should only see one green LLC, and there it is. And now we should see that donation. And there it is, donation type of service. Service was checked there. So pretty cool. Very time saving if you've got a lot of forms that you process on a regular basis. This can really streamline your process. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Sending an email and creating a record in Dynamics is nothing. I mean, you can have Teams notifications, you can have things created in SharePoint, you can, you can go wild with this stuff. This is very, very simple, but really cool. And I hope you all enjoyed, and until next time, have a good one.